Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about pull requests and comments. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, if my manager is a very technical person and provides a lot of code review comments every time I create a pull request, will they think poorly of my coding skills? Uh, Depends on the manager. Depends on like how sensitive they are, how important they feel things are, and the nature of the comments. Uh, Usually, when people ask me these sorts of questions, I find that it's more due to that you are insecure than that anything is necessarily wrong, or sometimes you are definitely in a bit of trouble, uh, but it's really nothing you can. There's very little you can do about that. I've seen, and this does happen. Sometimes you deal with a person who of extremes, or someone who has a lot of fairly strong opinions and has a little patience, like all of these magical combinations of a personality that makes them an absolute bad word to deal with. And people who are like that is sort of like it really doesn't matter how much you try to fix the situation, because unless you can understand the way that they think and sort of meet their expectations, uh, like your relationship won't actually be improved. It's the ever problematic battle between expectations and results. What you produce versus what they expect you to produce, and you can't, based on just saying that you get a lot of comments, like it's hard to say because it differs from person to person. Some people have a lot of comments and have a lot of ideas and thoughts, and they may not necessarily feel all that strongly about their comments. And some people like feel very, very strongly about things and will literally push their thoughts and opinions upon you. And so it comes down to your manager. How do they feel about all these comments? And then you can reflect a little bit on why do you care if they give you a lot of comments? As I sort of touched on, it's most likely because you're insecure. Because the reality is that getting comments on your code it's part of being a software developer. And as long as you sort of understand that it's a subjective thing, not always, but in many cases it's a subjective thing, what the person feels about your style of coding and so forth and so forth, and you can absolutely try, and you should of course try to align as best as possible and make sure that everybody has a sort of common way of coding and so forth. But at the same time, you can't really allow a person who might have a lot of opinions to push you to the point where you start questioning whether or not you know what you're doing. You can basically only look at what's the norm. Are you usually getting a lot of negative feedback, or are you usually getting a lot of you have to redo work or so forth and so forth? Then that's a bit of an issue. But in many cases, comments and so forth, they might just be suggestions of improvements or so forth and so forth. And it's guys, it's impossible to say to take an example. If you're at somebody's house, I don't know, and you sit on one of their sofas or something like that, and they go apeshit crazy about it because apparently that was I don't know, they felt that your pants were dirty or something like that, and they go over the top with in their reaction, then you would consider them kind of weird because it's not a normal reaction. Or I don't know, if someone has OCD and you put something out of position or so forth, and it starts messing them up. Guys, neurotic people like that, they do exist. And opinionated people, sure, they also exist, where you write something in an object-oriented style or functional style-ish, and someone goes absolute apeshit about that because they have a lot of, I don't know, emotional baggage related to that. But the question is that does that necessarily mean that you are the one who is in the wrong? You can also flip that and flip this thing and say that, well, if you're fucking up all the time, you're in general getting a lot of feedback and have to redo quite a lot of work, then it's probably not so weird that you're getting all these comments from your manager. You might feel more strongly about it because it's a manager. But at the end of the day, your skill level is where it is, and so if you're not consciously trying to fuck up, which I don't think a lot of people are doing, then there's nothing you can do about it. The good thing that I can say is that about this situation is that if you're getting a lot of comments from your manager or your tech lead or so forth and so forth, it's really a question of, do you still meet the expectations? Because they, as I said, they might just have a lot of opinions, and you can't really control whether or not that's going to have a negative impact on you, because it's all down to them, their opinion of your coding. So the good part about that is that it's more common that people are trying to be accommodating in a workplace, or trying to be supportive and so forth, and try to actually just get the work done, if I may say so, than it is that someone's out to get you, or someone's trying to be extra harsh on you. These people, they do exist, but they are not the norm. So if, let's say, that this place of work is starting to stress you out, and then you might find another place where it's much it's calmer, it's less stressful, etc., etc. But as I said, if you continuously see this issue, it's probably down to your coding skills. And that's probably the bad side of it. How do you fix that? Well, the only way you can do is just keep on coding. Try to reflect on what you're doing, try to do the best you can, etc., etc., and give it your all. That may sound silly and straightforward, but it's actually not. I have at this point pretty good authority that the interest rate for the average software developer in improving themselves and doing really well and mastering their craft is it's, as I've said before, guys, these rock star developers that have side projects and find this awesome and interesting and stuff like that, they're not the norm. The norm is that this is just another job for most people. And so this is why I give the tip to people that before you settle into a more lethargic state, a little bit of apathy, and you just code for the sake as a job, it's a good investment to make sure that you have your a fairly stable foundation to work from to start before you start getting complacent, because it might be that it can be difficult for you to hold down a job in the industry or get new employment and so forth if it turns out that you're actually not that good at this whole thing. That's just my 2 cents on the matter. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's impossible to tell whether or not someone thinks poorly of your coding skills just because they have a lot of comments, because some people, guys, they have a lot of opinions about absolutely everything. Some people talk a lot, some people don't talk so much. Some people think a lot, and some people never think or reflect or anything like that. Some people are extrovert, introverted, everybody's different here. So it's really it's basically impossible to say. The thing that I try to tell you in general about this is that it doesn't really matter if they think poorly of your code or not, because you can't just magically become better. Because if you it's the endless problem of what they expect and what you need to produce. It's the unfairness of having a teacher in your class when you're a student who you really click with, and then you sort of understand how to answer the test questions in a way that they are going to like, and that gives you a higher grade. Or if you go to a job and you don't really get how things are supposed to work, or you don't clicking mentally with your manager and they don't really like you as a result of that. This is endless, guys. It's never going to stop. It's every aspect of your life is going to be like that. And so my suggestion to you is to get to that point where you understand that as long as you on average are delivering the results necessary and you're meeting the expectations roughly of most of the people that you are working with, then it doesn't really matter if your manager has a lot of comments or not, because you can't really know their thoughts. I mean, you can ask them, of course, and so forth, but I suggest to you instead that you get to a place where you are secure in your own coding skills, that you know that you can solve most of the problems. And then you have to be honest with yourself as well, because it's really easy to just be complacent and say, yeah, it doesn't really matter, I know this sort of stuff. I'll meet a lot of those guys. I'll meet a lot of software developers who gave up way before they had like any type of serious skills. And sure, they might find more employment and so forth, and find companies, as I said, the industry has a really shitty hiring process, so they're gonna be fine. But as I said, if you have done your part and you know that you can get the results done, and you know that on average you meet the expectations of everybody else, then you don't have to worry so much what your manager thinks, because even if they have a lot of weird neurotic control freakish traits, the next person that you're going to work with is probably not going to have those, because in general people don't go completely crazy over code comments as you might think. And if they do, it's usually because of their own problems rather than something is like super wrong with the way that you are working. Have a great day.